Chapter 124. When I rejoined the upper floor, the man in red has returned to an animated discussion with Jean-Baptiste and the lady in blue. The air around them warps strangely so that I cannot discern their words, an intriguing effect created by a proximity enchantment set on his mask. A useful tool. The few guests in white have gathered in clumps, taken in their own intrigue, while Luther has wandered to the main floor on some errand. I am hailed by Dominique. A pleasant performance. Maximilian's prowess with charm shames us all, and places him above the majority of the Lancasters, so any compliment he pays speaks very highly of one's performance. Well done. You honor me. You almost went too deep at the end. Be careful, for strong memories bring strong associations. He did mention his wife. I like to step aside and deprive the prey of visual cues. It helps settle them. Ah, listen to me ramble. I am, in fact, taking notes. One does not every day get pointers from a centuries-old master of intrigue. I invited you for a celebration, and we could not go 5 minutes without you being hassled. I am making a poor show of it. Let us relax as we await the next act. Dominique and I make small talk, and by small talk, I mean that he questions me about the New World. Our discussion remains light-hearted, and I never come close to revealing what I believe to be confidential information. His main focus seems to be the opinion we have of our European cousins. When I imply that we expect interference sooner or later, my host surprises me by confirming my doubts, as expected, in a roundabout way. Some, like our good Bertrand, see the world at large as an opportunity for our kind to expand faster. He theorizes that vampires require a living space, and that as apex predators, our living space is significantly larger than that of humans and beasts alike. Our numbers increase slowly while the spawn of men thrive and multiply, something that will become a cause for worry when we are inevitably discovered. You believe that we will be dragged into the light? Yes. Do you not? I do. I just expected you to believe that you could maintain the status quo. I have not remained in power for so long by basing my plans on hopes, young Ariane. The mages will publicize their existence, and soon. Afterward, the other members of the supernatural family will be revealed one by one. And Bertrand believes that aggressive expansion could offset the risks. Bertrand believes that a more united vampiric, forgive the word, will be best equipped to fend off the backlash we will face. We would, of course, need to agree to be ruled by a united government. I finally understand. Bertrand heads a faction dedicated to uniting all of us under one flag, by force if necessary. That includes taking over the New World as we are comparatively weaker, and that means that if he has the opportunity to deprive us of one of our assets, he will. Such assets include a stable, Saint-Dever with a proven record of acceptable combat prowess. Bertrand wants me dead. He was the one who tried to dispose of me, and Dominique just informed me in the most direct way possible. For a mask, that is. An intriguing plan. I believe that a fragmented nation means that we cannot be taken down in one fell swoop. However, perhaps there would be a need to decide on a common strategy to handle the crisis stemming from the Great Reveal. The Great Reveal. I like that. Yes, I will be in touch with Constantine. Ah, and here is the next piece of entertainment. Maximilian steps on the stage again while a string watcher sits behind him to provide background music. Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow denizens of the sunless earth. Here comes the moment that you have been expecting, the selection of the Queen of the Night. A pair of burly men in Sphinx masks come, carrying a rectangular black box covered in shimmering runes and reinforced with silvery bands, which they unlock to reveal a circular opening at the top. The thing looks massive and incredibly heavy. Is that a raffle? I ask with disbelief. Dominique merely chuckles. One of the more recent and popular ideas from our brave Maximilian. He writes the names of the women set to attend the party and places them in this strong box, which is then kept in a secret location for a week before being brought here. We do not check for tampering, and the trail to follow is only mildly difficult. Hold on, do you mean? Yes. This is a cheating competition. This time, the strong box was placed in a bank vault. We made it excruciatingly clear that the guards were not to be harmed, and we have seen, I must say, quite a few interesting takes on changing the contents of the box. You understand the issue with changing the box's contents, yes? I think for a second, and, of course, you have to be the last one. Indeed, you must be the last person to change the names to your advantage in order to win. That means that every new robber must contend both with the security and with the presents left by the previous teams. I do believe that I know who will win, though I will refrain from commenting for now. There could always be an upset. Maximilian is done ranting about the illustrious tradition he created merely a few years ago. He plunges a hand in the box and moves it around while the four players accompany him with dramatic tension. And the winner is Meredith of the Hastings. Everyone applauds immediately, and I do not detect a hint of distress from those who played and lost. A fair lady in a bee-themed mask points a finger at herself, apparently surprised. Instead of climbing to the stage to claim her prize, she turns to a man by her side and curtsies deeply. Dominique leans towards me to whisper in my ear. Theodore of the Roland, the true artisan of this victory. Ah, what a delightful lad. Maximilian would not shut up when he figured out the young man's trick. You see, Theodore unexpectedly went early to the box and left without altering it. He returned one night later and changed the upper plate, the one that Maximilian just put his hand through. I try to imagine someone in a bank vault, juggling magical implements and a screwdriver to achieve his goals. It must have been quite the task. Do you not protect the box against tampering? Of course we do. There are low-level enchantments to prevent alteration as well as high-tier trackers to prevent someone from switching the whole box with another one. We detected the tampering, but Maximilian judged that it was delicate and clever enough that it should be tolerated. He also loved young Theodore's concept. You see, that lad enchanted the plate so that every paper going through it will have his darling's name written on it. A brilliant idea. And no matter how many times the ballots were replaced within the vault, the final result would be the same. And Theodore struck a deal with Meredith. No, he just fancies her terribly. What a way to woo a girl. Why, I believe that he will spend a pleasant evening. And indeed, Maximilian enthrones Meredith in a farcical remake of a royal coronation. No sooner is the lady crowned, that she calls upon the crafty thief to join her side. The couple then walks through the crowd on their way to the balcony, receiving silent accolades and excited signs from everyone around. Meanwhile, Maximilian flutters from group to group. Our gracious host will give a ranking to every performer, in secret of course, so that they may improve in the future. What an excellent way to promote a healthy competition. Indeed. And now, please excuse me a moment as I congratulate the victors. Dominique leaves me behind, and Luther uses this opportunity to take my side. Chairs of stone emerge from the stage's ground, white and sober, as the quartet leaves and a column of mortals joins the party. They wear expressionless white masks and carry their instruments with them in an awkward shuffle, clearly unused to the ponderous red garments they had been given for the occasion. At their head stands a tall, fat man with long white hair. He huffs and puffs as he carries a pulpit with him, on which he fastened music sheets. Oh, mortal performers, I observe. The best at captivating us, Luther replies, I enjoy good music very much. It is the only time when masks will shut up. Ahem. Luther leans towards me. From so close, the scent of old power and the sensation of being in the forest almost overwhelms me. Do I shock you, Ariane of the Nerari? No, but you cannot blame me for avoiding a joke at our host's expense. I already tested the limits of their hospitality. Indeed. That cute little train conductor you seduced was most adamant in her protests. I had the opportunity to lodge a formal protest. How fares Odilon? The perpetrator? I am not sure if I am at liberty to say. To graciously dodge the question while leaving a hint, as tradition demands. He was appreciating Jean-Baptiste's furniture the last time I checked. Luther's amusement is palpable. Bravo, Ariane, very subtle. Ah yes, he was giving them a close look, I would wager. They can be so convoluted. Thank you for the rescue. I would not want you to feel like the only straight arrow in a quiver of hoops. Any witty retort I may have found dies on my lips as we watch the orchestra, now settled, welcome the arrival of a diva in a pink gown with a domino mask, and a male singer in a grey tuxedo. Also, did I seduce the train operator? It was by accident. I swear. Ah, Ernani, Luther says as he nods to himself. Ernani. Yes, a recent opera by Giuseppe Verdi. Are you familiar with the man? I love Nabucco. Then you will be delighted. This is the orchestra of the Opera Theatre de la Nation. Maximilian sometimes pays princely sums to famous performers so that they come here and entertain us. I recognize their conductors, as well as the singers. Does he not fear discovery? Maximilian gives them 2 louis d'or per night and per head. I assure you that paying musicians a generous wage is such a rare occurrence these days that they would not forfeit their chance for any reason. Besides, this is Paris. You cannot raid a bakery without stumbling upon 2 secret societies meetings. The musicians tune quickly. The lights dim while strange lamps crisscross the stage until the performers are illuminated and we bask in darkness. What follows is a reproduction of my very first night at the opera with Tauran. The orchestra and singers play airs from Verdi's masterpiece with talent backed by experience and hard work. The performance is flawless. The stage comes alive with the distressed arias of the disgraced nobleman Ernani and his promised, the beautiful and fierce Elvira. By themselves, then in pairs, they proclaim their love. I have to stop myself from leaning too much over the balustrade on 2 occasions, especially when Elvira begs Ernani to save her from marriage with a decrepit old codger. Poor thing. I have Luther to thank for offering context, as I do not speak a word of Italian. The performance ends too soon, and Maximilian now steps on the platform. An extraordinaire performance, toutes mes felicitations, he says to the orchestra, then he turns to us. And now, my fellow puppeteers, I invite you to join us in singing a beautiful hymn, one that speaks of a lost land and its memory. Though we remain apatride, we surely all long for what we sacrificed on the path. To me, my dearies, to me, and let your voices rise on wings of gold. This is my favorite part, Luther whispers in my ear, watch closely, for you will not witness this anywhere else. The chef d'orchestre lifts a wand. Wood and brass answers. The music starts softly, with strings offering melancholic phrases, then the vast cavern booms with the call of fate, mirroring the cruel destiny of Nabucco's Hebrews as they lament the loss of their city. Finally, the introduction ends with hints of hopes. The vampires come into play. With a single voice, they sing, as unmoving as the cavern around them. The chorus should express a powerful longing, but in the polar voices of the assembly, its tune becomes hollow and threatening. The assembly's inability to convey emotions they no longer experience turns the hymn into a dirge, the auric wings tarnished, yet no less imposing for it. Mask voices are as exact as they are flat, and their mechanical precision echoes an increasingly distressed orchestra. They can feel it. Haunted eyes rise from music sheets and away from the frantic director. They steal glances at what they finally recognize as predators. La memoria nel Peter accendi, si favela del tempo che fu. Rekindle the memories in our heart, and speak of times gone by. Too late. It is far too late for us. No golden harps or prophets' voices will help us recover what we left behind. The only warmth we feel is the one we plunder. After touching the hidden sky and the depths of the world, the chorus finally dies down with pianissimo voices and lightly plucked strings. The harmony lingers in the air for a few more seconds which are still, to me, parts of the song. Then the conductor lowers his hands and the performance is over. We all applaud the mortals and each other, and I do so with gusto. Truly, that was a show like no others. I only listen with half an ear to Maximilian's compliments. Afterward, the orchestra shuffles away in silence, heads bent and eyes lost like drunken revelers heading home. Light progressively returns to the cave and the flickers of conversing hands heralds the return to normalcy. I lean back from the balcony. I hope you had a delightful experience. Alas, I forgot to inform you about this new tradition, or I would have invited you to join us, Dominique pleasantly says as he returns to my side. Yes, well, no. Think nothing of it. I believe that I had a more pleasant time listening than I would have had singing. Me and everyone with functional ears in a 50 yards radius. It gladdens me that you would find the show to your taste. I am glad to see the younger generations appreciating the fine arts just as much as we do. Ah, how I wish we could end the evening on that beautiful note. Alas, we have a terrible matter to attend. 2 of our domains have entered into conflict over ownership of the city of Amiens, and agreed to settle their differences tonight. A duel? I ask. I always like a good duel as long as I am not on the receiving end. In a manner of speaking. No, I fear that the offended party chose chess. I was not aware that the game of kings was such a dreadful pastime. I am personally terrible at it, but I still have a good time watching experts play. You will understand very shortly. As expected, Maximilian returns to the platform. Our friends from Rouen and Lille agreed on a trial by chess for the control of Amiens. Although I regret, as always, that it has come to violence, I can only salute the determination of both parties in pursuing this ancient tradition. What? Lord Corentin, please select your champion, he continues. We choose Master Pascal d'Alembert. From the door behind the stage, a portly man with a frizzy black beard and a dark ensemble comes out. He is immortal, calm and composed. D'Alembert is a renowned player, one that has dominated the field for over a decade. Lille is practically unbeaten, Dominique explains in a deceptively light tone. Only mortal players have the wherewithal to do what must be done. I have a terrible feeling about this. And you, Lady Annabelle? We choose Sabine Trillis. The crowd twitches and signs as a young woman appears, eliciting a raised brow from the chess master. She has sad, large brown eyes, and an elegant dress that both fits and does not. It is too majestic for the girl's nervous hands and bent back. Set the stage and let the contestants take their place. The stones of the platform shift again. Squares disappear below ground and emerge back later, now shiny onyx. Soon, a traditional board, 8x8, occupies a significant portion of the space. Then the pieces appear. Wearing swords and square shields, men in black and white uniforms emerge in 2 lines from the back. Cattle. They take the places of pawns as I watch with horrified fascination. Then. No. No 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 no. No. I turn to Dominique to confirm that this is a joke, a jest to terrify me, but no, vassals are now stepping up to the playing ground. Vassals. No, this is not what I think it is. I refuse to believe it. Maximilian flips a coin. Sabine Trillis gets wide. The vassals, garbed in a variety of costumes designed to mimic armor, split into groups. Sabine's team lines up behind the white cattle pawns. You may begin. Pawn to d4, the girl declares in French. A man with glassy eyes takes a few steps forward. Knight to c6, D'Alembert retorts with barely hidden contempt. And so they go on, until the fateful moment. Pawn to e5, Sabine announces. One of the cattle steps forward into the diagonal. He brandishes his sword and sweeps at the opposing pawn's neck. The sharpened blade hews through sinew and cartilage with a ghastly crunch. A tremendous geyser of blood splatters the killer, the ground, and a few nearby pieces as the fallen piece collapses on the ground with a last gurgle. By the watcher. Surely they would not. Surely. 2 guards in sphinx masks come to retrieve the body, leaving promptly to free the space for D'Alembert's next move. The victorious pawn's rule ends when D'Alembert has yet another cattle strike him down. Sabine, however, was expecting it. Queen to d8. Gasps echo through the spectators, and I understand why. D'Alembert's move deprived his queen of cover, and Sabine decided to trade pieces in what I recognize to be a suicidal move. Her queen will take as and be in turn taken by the king. But no. They would not. A tall woman with a lost look steps forward with a heavy mace. On the other side, a smaller woman with very dark hair turns rigid. With slow purpose, the White Queen moves forth. Her mace rises. This is wrong. Wrong. This is all wrong. What are they doing? What are you doing? I hiss, realizing that the entire private floor can hear me and not caring one bit. How? This makes no sense, no sense at all. The Black Queen lets out a muffled scream, a sharp thing that escapes through gritted teeth. I step forward and stop when I feel a hand on my shoulder. I swipe it away, feeling something impact. Claws grab my neck. No 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 no, fight it. Broken skull, one eye falling down, a mess of brain and matted hair. A second squishy hit. I am dragged away, through a door, only to hear Sabine's calm voice. We forfeit. A corridor and Dominique slams me against an engraved wall. He shows no emotion but regret. It is their choice. I cannot intercede. Then you are mad, you are all mad. Their sacrifice and ours will prevent the many deaths that come with open war. It is better to die on the field than to allow such travesty to occur. You have lost yourselves, you fools. I hiss and sputter, knowing that I offend and not caring a bit. They are insane. They are monstrous. Such a travesty should never have been allowed to occur. Blasphemy. Subsume and prevent. Our contest is cruel, but so is war. When a lord falls, their servant dies as well. Their vassals suffer from the severed bond. You use sophistry to deny the truth, and the truth is that a servant's life is sacred. We all know it. We all feel it. You perceived the collective pain we all endured just as I did when that woman died. Bound mortals are not tools to be used in games of power. Everything is a tool. If you truly believe that, then there is nothing left behind the masks. You have become empty vessels with no substance. Heavy silence descends upon the empty corridor. I want to kill him. I want to kill them all. They desecrate everything that we should stand for. They taint the most fundamental rules that keep us in check. Vassals are treasures. I will never, ever tolerate anything else but that. I shall forgive your words, as I understand where they came from. You have my apologies for submitting you to such a spectacle. I did not expect such a powerful instinctual response. Perhaps you should pay more attention to what your instincts tell you. Claws grab my neck once more. Be careful what you wish for. I swipe once more with as much speed as I can gather and Dominique takes a step back. Spare me the theatrics, unless you wish to further break the rules of hospitality. You wanted me for something, yes? Tell me what it is so that I can leave this place. All the art and the songs, they no longer matter to me. The evening is entirely ruined by. I cannot think about it without feeling a bone-deep anguish. I should have. But no. I tried and was restrained. They are fools. Imbeciles. Dominique takes my measure. I cross my arms to signify that we are fully done. Very well. Please, follow me to my study. We walk up a set of stairs and through soberly decorated alleys. Contrary to the catacombs, this place is warmer, and smells of fresher air. Eventually, Dominique opens a door and we enter a richly decorated workroom. Time to see what this is all about, why I had to fight my way through battle masters, got stabbed in the chest, then had to witness the murder of a vassal. Time to see why the head of masks demands my presence. I hope that it will not bind me to this place for another fortnight, because I am more than fed up. Dominique gestures. On a dark wood table, in the middle of the space, a single book has been left with a fountain pen by its side. This is a collector's tome with a richly decorated cover and the crisp, white pages I associate with brand new editions. Indeed, I approach and realize that the bindings still smell of fresh leather. I pick up the pen without quite understanding my role until I look closer. A good half of the cover shows an excellent rendition of a red-haired man fighting off goons in brown outfits. He holds a sword in one hand, and a voluptuous dark-haired beauty in the other. In the background, a fetching blonde woman with a torch and a muscular man with dark hair and a beard fend off more assailants. The title jumps to my eyes in all its golden-lettered glory. The Cecil R. Bingle Omnibus, Volume 3. Dominique's voice wakes me up from my consternation. I would like an autograph, Ariane Delaney. Motherfucker. Chapter 125. The inn had seen better days. The man in a hat poured himself another goblet of rum. He nursed it, savoring the burn as it went down his gullet. Even the stench of piss and vomit disappeared under the heady savor of processed sugarcane. It brought the man back to decades ago, when his world was simpler, and the sun of the Caribbean shone on endless opportunities. He allowed himself a sigh of contentment before returning his focus to the sleaze in front of him. While the man was a creature of the sea, the sleaze was a dweller in the muck. He had the pallid face and rotund gut that came with too little activity, too many shepherd's pies, or whatever fatty stuff they served here. The man felt an intense dislike for the sleaze, yet he said nothing, for the sleaze brought money. Usually. "So, what do you say?" the sleaze asked. "You know, there are rumors," the man replied. The sleaze frowned. "Rumors," the man continued with a pointed look, "and gossip. The crew of the Triton took a similar offer a few weeks ago. They told stories of a deed gone to shit." "Poppycock," the sleaze said, with a dismissive wave of his gloved hand. "They said that they met a she-devil below deck. That she swallowed a bullet and spat it out. They say that she killed 2 men by breaking their necks with 2 fingers. They say that she let them go because she had her fill. Surely, Captain, you do not believe those inventions. Stories, all of those." The man served himself another goblet. It would be the last one. He was no longer 16. Hadn't been for a while. "I say that she let them go as bait." Eyes met eyes over the decrepit table. "And a week ago, men came. They had questions." "I don't like questions." The sleaze did not reply. He, too, knew about the men. He had disappeared. The devil knew where the moment their strange white uniforms started to dot the streets. "And now you come here asking me to seek a pale lady on a small ship. The money, I have not lasted this long in my profession by being an imbecile. All the gold in the Royal Bank won't do you any good if it's Davy Jones footing the bill. I say no. And if others say yes, they are fools." With that said, the man downed the rum and sighed in appreciation. He walked out, shutting the door behind him. The noise of children playing in the sunny street came and dimmed again. The sleaze did not follow. A fancy cottage in Essex, 5 days after the Parisian night. A vampire and a godling sat on either side of a coffee table, each nursing a cup of fragrant black tea. A small fire was dying in the hearth. Sometimes, shiny embers danced over the blackened log, and the wood cracked merrily. There were no lights. The godling was old, ancient even, and yet powerful muscles still clung stubbornly to his aging frame. He lounged without fear, eyes closed. A persistent smile lifted the corners of his lips, hidden behind a scar and a prodigious white mustache. Between them, a series of books lay piled high. They were fresh from the printer, and still smelled vaguely of new leather. "You haven't changed," the godling finally said. His voice only carried one emotion, and it was wonder. "You haven't found a cure to your curse then?" he asks immediately after with obvious concern. "Huh, only death will lift this one. I am content. Rather, I will always be grateful for your understanding at that time. It helped me a lot. I was young then. We both were. And I do believe that you have started to repay me." The godling answered with a twinkle in his eyes. "Are you referring to your children?" "Indeed. I was endlessly amused when Nathan sent me the draft for his second book. Ariane Delaney. I could scarcely believe my eyes. You saved him, did you not? Not his life, but I believe that he would have had his heart broken if we had failed. And a heart is needed to differentiate an adventurer from a looter. Ah, it pleases me endlessly to know that the younger generation has taken the torch to carry the name Bingle into the annals of history, even if the more respectable circles would dismiss it as nothing but bluster. Perhaps not for long. The world is changing. But it might be too late for my youngest. A good head on her shoulders, that one. Perhaps too good sometimes. Miranda? She and I had a little encounter that, I believe, changed her mind. The godling chuckled, and it soon turned into a full-belly laugh. Ah, I am so pleased to see that the spirit of adventure lives on in my dear children. I am so glad that I got to share what I saw with them. Is it also why you wrote your memoirs? That, and 2 other reasons. Do tell. The second, we do not all have the benefit of dodging old age, Miss Delaney. A man may live for decades, but leave a good book behind and he will keep touching hearts for centuries. We all have our paths to immortality, in a way. A noble goal. And the third. Money. Ha! I used the mountain of pounds and shillings I made to purchase the lovely domain you see, as well as help for Rose and I in our old age. Our children got the best education money could provide through pages upon pages of naked blades and stiff upper lips. Huzzah! And thus, a new generation of Bingles was unleashed upon the world, to find adventure wherever it may be. You know, Ariane, sometimes I believe that adventures find us. The vampire smiled mysteriously. Who knows? They sipped tea in companionable silence. You know, the godling said, even without the rest, I would still have been pleased with the one expedition we completed together. Even after finding the diamond of Manipura and the golden crown of the Prince of the Serengeti, saving those 50 people from a cult remains my greatest achievement. This, more than jewels, fills me with pride. You have a good heart, Cecil. I could tell the moment that we met, and the only thing you expressed was sympathy. You were more guarded, then. I am glad to see that you have grown into your own, if only inside of your heart. I hope that you will find it in you to extend your benevolence to my grandchildren. You have my word that I will help those I can, given the occasion. The world would be drabber without them around to open forbidden vaults and uncover cursed temples. I just hope that neither they nor I will bite off more than we can chew. But, my dear Ariane, being an adventurer is all about that. December 1849, Boston, 2 years after the Parisian night. The street urchin hid his hands under his armpits. The mittens were not enough to keep the cold at bay. The old man by his side pointed to the right, where late pedestrians passed by the lit windows of tailor shops. Even at this late hour, the streets bustled with late shoppers and clerks heading home from work. How about that one? What do you say? The woman he chose was young, with blonde hair held up in two buns over her ears. A fashionable hat matched a dark blue cloak and gown ensemble that looked slightly too cold for the weather. Despite that, she showed no signs of suffering from the biting wind that froze the urchin to his core. The street rat stared and counted. He judged that her outfit must cost upward to $20 despite the lack of much jewelry. At least. She also walked all slow and proper, and she had a handbag that could have some good money in it. And she was young and without a chaperone. Really, a perfect mark. And yet, there was something there that pushed the urchin's intuition to scream. It had never failed him, this intuition. Right now, it said not to approach the woman. It said to stay away, on the other side of the bay preferably. No, he told the old man. Huh, you're still so green. Look, no. She's bad news. Have you lost your damn mind? The urchin shook his head with vehemence. The old man had never seen him so animated, so assertive. Remember when I told you the cops were coming, and they were? The urchin said. The woman passed them by. Suddenly, it felt even colder. The Arctic gale sent the urchin's teeth chattering. Fair enough. The old man whispered with a frightful glance, fair enough. Come on. They left. The urchin looked back one last time as they turned the corner. His gaze met a pair of sapphires as cold as the winter solstice. There, he saw only two things. Death, and amusement. The sapphires followed him as he started to run. Thankfully, she did not follow. July 1851, Moonside, Illinois, 4 years after the Parisian night. The vampire and the mage rode into the village. It was a strange village. It lacked a few things. First, and sadly, it lacked children. And the old folks to look after them. Second, it lacked clothes. Or at least, that is how it appeared as many trod its street in the state of nature. The blonde mage took a deep breath. She was an interesting mix of deadly implements and noble beauty. Wheat-colored ringlets fell to her armor-clad shoulders, mixing with the white of her uniform. A sword adorned her lovely waist. She was the perfect synthesis of the war mage and the Austrian princess. She also smelled nervous, and the peculiar inhabitants of this peculiar village tasted it in the air. The vampire turned to the side and a tiny brunette pointed at a nearby field. "Just finished," she added, though what she was referring to was not expanded on. The vampire and the cablite rode through the street. A man stopped to sniff the air, but his companion slapped him across the back of the head, muttering something about not mentioning the smell and having to regrow your damn ears. The pair made their way to a vast field unimpeded. There, they met a tall man cleaning his blood-soaked hands in a basin held by a bored-looking, muscular young woman. The man had the powerful build of a fighter at the top of his form. His body was covered in wiry muscles as taut as strings. He also moved with unnerving grace as he greeted the visitors with a happy smile. His square jaw and messy brown hair lent him a roguish charm that had some effect on the mage. Bosswoman, how are you doing? I told June, you know. I told her. Damn, it's been a while since we last saw the bosswoman, and there was this here matter that I had to solve and I just knew that the bosswoman would check on her good pal Jeff. Didn't I? Anyway, so good to see you. Is this the matter you are referring to? The vampire asked. In the field, there were many people milling about and discussing matters as if they were at a tavern. The center of the field hosted a circle drawn in chalk, and at the edge, there were the remains of a monster of good size. It would have been scary, with a wolf head filled with sharp, curved fangs, were it not for the sorry state it was in. Someone had done an impressive number on the thing. Its blood soaked the ground. One of the arms was detached. Yes. Every 3 months or so, someone from the north comes and sees that Moonside is a pretty sweet haven, you know. Milk and honey and whatnot. They see this and they think, damn, there's a lot of girls here, and food. And the weather is nice, I guess? We have amazing weather, that's for sure. Helps with the crops, and the hunts. Situation. Anyway, they see this and do they think that it's all hard work and being buddies with the immortal night horror who ate Fenris Enforcer in front of him because she was feeling peckish? No, they're all, yeah, free stuff. And I'm all, nah fellas, you want something, you have to go through me first. And they're all, ha, you are a tenderfoot who doesn't know about the hardships of the north. I have eaten my own shoes boiled with salt and my belt as a side dish, all while pushing the coals around with my massive, throbbing, oh there are ladies here never mind. But you get the idea. Funny thing is, they keep me on my toes. Can't get rusty with those around. Hey. You might think that they might learn, but they don't. It's like werewolves are not the most shining intellects around. Crazy, huh? Yes, the vampire deadpanned, unbelievable. Thanks bosswoman. So, who's the new girl? Hello. Yes, and a good evening to you Mr. Jeffrey. Ha! Mr. Jeffrey. You hear that, June? Now that's real class. Mr. Jeffrey. Got a pep to it. Don't you think? Why just the other day I told old man Gregor, I told him, I said, Jeffrey, as commendable as I find your enthusiasm, I need to finish this conversation before dawn. The vampire interrupts. She smiled gently to take the edge off her comment. They were, after all, on his territory. Jeffrey, I would like you to meet Carmela von Lieb, of the White Cabal. She and her family have suffered at the hands of other werewolves, and she requested to meet with you in order to overcome her fear. The tall man unleashed a devastating lopsided grin on the hapless woman. He wore trousers and nothing else, highlighting an impressive physique. Why, yes, fair lady, I will be your huckleberry, EY. The muscular woman by his side had so far listened to their conversation in sullen silence punctuated by the occasional eye roll. As Jeffrey tried to flirt, however, she had apparently decided that it was time to intervene and emptied the water basin on her leader's head. Then, using the distraction, she decked him. The pair fell into a snarling pile of play fighting. It was clear that Jeffrey would win with ease, when suddenly a grown man with lost eyes bowled into the victorious werewolf, resetting the struggle. Then, a wisp of a girl with a pixie haircut joined the fray, followed by a dangly fellow with a long beard. A massive fat man grabbed half of the pile and smashed it into the other. Gus, Get your fat fucking ass off my face. Someone bellowed. In the clearing, the visitors looked on. The vampire was checking the time on her watch while her horse sniffed disdainfully. Is it always like that? The mage asked. You get used to it. The mage was still a bit scared, but the werewolves had certainly lost some of their mystique already. And that was before the naked people charged in. 1854, a secured compound on the coast of Florida, 7 years after the Parisian night. The war mage checked his circle one last time. This one was not some hastily drawn defense. It was engraved in the stone beneath him at great cost, with molten silver and great patience. The main gate had always been designed with reverence and defensibility in mind. It was paying off now. All right, remember, don't wait until they come in. Fire immediately, he said to the men and women by his side. There were a dozen of them. He prayed that it would be enough. His attention returned to the double doors in front of him, made of solid wood reinforced with enchanted nails and steel bars. The fighters by his side wore clothes of an assortment of colors. His foes wore white and, more worryingly, red. The Red Cabal. He had heard of them. It was said that they served a dangerous master. There was a rumble and he brought his focus front and center. The wall on his left exploded inward, and a horror walked through the opening. No, the horror walked, and it made an opening. Mortar and bricks yielded under his tremendous bulk. Debris large enough to crush his skull bounced off his armor like gravel. He was humanoid, and he wore on himself a steel armor colored black and engraved with reinforcement runes shining a terrifying red in the shadows. The plates that made his protection were thick enough to stop a cannonball, and he wore them as if they weighed nothing. The floor groaned with every step. The man stomped down and cracks snaked out from the impact. He grunted, and swept before him with a maul of ridiculous proportions. The inelegant implement smashed through their entire flank with disheartening ease. Where the giant struck, only mangled bodies were left with bleeding eyes and ears from the shock of their crumpled shields. But the man was not a war mage for nothing. Inferno. Mistral, a calm voice retorted. The wave of pure heat met a cold front as solid as a wall. Tempestuous winds ravaged the main entrance. The man looked up from behind the protection of his raised arm to see the Colossus walk by. Their eyes met. The man felt himself dragged in the placid brown gaze. There were no emotions there, just a relentless drive to accomplish the task he was given. The sheer will inside of the Titan's mind was crushingly overwhelming. Here was a creature who would destroy a mountain piece by fucking piece over the eons if ordered. All obstacles would be swept not by smarts, but by single-minded obstinacy. The amulet around the war mage's pinged and the link between the two broke. The mage was not so much protected as kicked back into himself, reeling from the frayed contact. The Colossus was now obliterating his way through his other flank. There were 2 gunshots and the men he had placed on the balcony fell to the ground with gaping holes where their chest used to be. It was already over, and there had been no battles. All those efforts and preparations swept away like a sandcastle. He knew why. Even without the show of speed and inhuman power, even without the deleterious gaze that gnawed at his willpower, there were the auras. Cold. Powerful. Uncaring. 2 of them. The war mage reinforced his shield as a woman stepped down from the wreck of the wall. Fighters in red and white were pouring in from the breach, not mixing with one another. They moved further into the complex in a way that showed that they were following clear orders, and knew where to go. It was humbling. It occurred to the war mage that he was the last alive from his group. Men and women he had trained and dined with now lay dead, their lives extinguished in mere moments. So many talents from so many places snuffed out at the same time, and with no result. The war mage was too experienced to feel much guilt. They were fucked no matter, that much was obvious. Which begged the question, why was he still alive? The male vampire held his humongous weapon close enough for the war mage to spot runes of breach and destruction. It was a tool specifically designed to crush shields. A mage killer. The female one stopped to stand in front of him. He avoided her glare. Why? He asked. They were just smugglers who traded in exotic goods. Certainly not anything that justified such a thorough extermination. Do you know who your main investor is? the woman asked in a smooth voice. She had the barest southern accent. My investor? The man repeated with incredulity. So, you do not know? Tell me, you are the head of security here, yes? I was. Until you killed everyone. How does this relate with my fucking investor? I got no investor, only a boss. Your company is an interesting benefactor, one who has used your supply routes to smuggle equipment in and information out. We are in a period of preparation, you understand. Everyone is setting their pieces on the board, and it so happens that you are helping the other side. And so you came and slaughtered us? Just like that? Yes. Just like that. She was barely paying attention. Is that why you kept me alive? You wanted to make an example out of me? He could see mild surprise through the pitted war mask as the vampire returned her attention to him. Example? No, my dear. You are neither an example nor a rescue. Then. She was suddenly very close. The shield wavered around him. Her voice grew husky. You are a dessert. September 1857, Louisiana, 10 years after the Parisian night. The vampire held a small babe in her arms. Her poison-like touch showed a certain experience with children, although she kept her a bit farther than necessary, as if afraid to break her. There was still a distance there. A certain unease. What do you think? The mother said by her side. She had the frazzled hair of someone with too little sleep, but her eyes gleamed with excitement and a smile to match. Healthy and beautiful, I can ask no more from my namesake. I hope that she grows to be smart and careful, just like her mom. They spent some time playing with the child until she fell asleep. How are things otherwise? The western plantation was destroyed in a flood 2 weeks ago. Fortunately, everyone got out before, so we have no casualties. The harvest was insured. My only worry is that the broker might make some difficulties. If it happens, do let me know. I can convince them to honor their bargain. Yes. You know, since that incident with the bank 5 years ago, everyone has been polite and respectful with me. Unsurprising. I made an example out of them, after all. What did you do? It would be best if you did not know. December 1858, Boston, 11 years after the Parisian night. I have no idea what this is, the tall vampire said. He placed his aristocratic hands on his desk, fingers intertwined. His attention was devoted to the strange item before him. It was a dark root covered in thorns. The base had been severed in a particularly clean way. One thing is certain, however. It is not made of earthly materials. It has no weight when measured, though I can feel it pull when I move it around. I am sorry that I cannot help you. Furthermore, even if I had not sworn to keep my inquiries secret, there would still be no one I can think of who could give us an answer. You said that it flashed and disappeared when you touched it? He asked the blonde woman facing him. Yes. Others can pick them up, apparently. Would you be willing to demonstrate? The blonde vampire placed a finger on the root. It disappeared in a flash of purple light, leaving nothing behind. It was as if it had never existed at all. From the color, I would hypothesize that it relates to your future Magna Arca. How so? I would prefer not to elaborate. We progenitors have access to our own from the moment we were reborn, although, it took me a moment to realize that I had the ability at my disposal. I was informed by the lords and ladies I questioned that the ascension to their status was a personal experience, and that it varied greatly between one person and another. As such, any information I could give you could hamper your progress. It would be better if you approached this important step on your own. Do not be too disappointed. Your actions so far have shown an intrinsic understanding of your own nature that I can only admire. I am sure that you will be fine. The blonde vampire blinked, perhaps surprised at the compliment. As an apology for my lack of results, how about another class on blood magic? I would be delighted. And so would I, you know. You are much easier to handle as a student than as a fellow ruler. If you showed the same acumen for leadership as you did for the study of the arcane arts. I will have no lip now, young miss. The class has begun. March 1859, Boston, 12 years after the Parisian night. the warden of Illinois, and her second climbed down the rock stairs leading to the heart of the mountain, the seat of the shadowy power ruling the North American vampires. Runes shining a dull red cast a worrying glare on black stones that no mortal had seen in over a decade. There, below, decisions were taken that would reach many groups. With a single vote, 100 souls could be consigned to oblivion. It had happened before. I could accomplish so much with just one cadre of the Red Cabal, the red-haired one hissed. I told you, it is too soon. I will wait for their esprit de corps to crystallize into tradition before splitting their numbers. The Red Cabal is less than 3 years old, and they are a tentative group at best. Only when they have created an identity will it be safe for me to split their numbers, the blonde one retorted. Her annoyed tone suggested that the current discussion was merely the rehash of past grievances. Just tell me if you do not trust me. I trust you, Melusan. Did I not make you my second? Your alternatives are a dimwit and a pickpocket. Forgive me if I am not convinced. Doe is not a dimwit, the blonde vampire warned with an edge to her voice. The other raised her hands in surrender. Fine. Fine. Just keep in mind that we are missing opportunities that will not occur again. If you need magical support, I can fund a mercenary squad. They will not be as trustworthy, however. I am aware. And yes, Chicago is developing quickly, and the new territories offer intriguing opportunities for expansion. I need all the means I can get. Consider it an investment. I hope I will see a return soon. I have already tied too much liquidity in those projects of yours. And you will have massive returns. I promise it. The pair arrived at a landing and doors opened to let them in. The circular room was already occupied by powerful denizens of the night sitting in uneasy silence around an imposing round table made of raised stone. The mood was tense. The two representatives of Illinois sat at their designated spot. The blonde one exchanged a quick nod with the second of Louisiana, a sinuous black woman with a perpetual thin smile. A few more joined them, then a tall man in a red robe entered, and the vault was sealed shut behind him. Silence and immobility now reigned in the room. Those who sensed such things could have felt perfectly contained auras, one for each attendant. Another with a sharp control might have detected the edge they had. Welcome to the conclave of the Accords, the tall man began without preamble. Tonight we address the grievances of Lord Adam, of Alabama. Lord Adam, the floor is yours. The tall man sat down and a twin in a beige ensemble stood up, his sibling remaining in his chair. They both had eyes and hair of very light brown, almost copper. Thank you, Speaker. We come to complain about the escape of more than 120 slaves of various origins from our land over the past 3 months. All have been confirmed as genuinely escaped, and all have headed north into Tennessee, Kentucky, and eventually, Illinois. I have ample evidence that those fugitives received help from a well-developed organization. Unfortunately, any efforts made to recover those slaves from the state of Illinois have been rendered fruitless by the vehemence with which said hunters were compelled into leaving. The blonde vampire allowed herself the tiniest predatory smile. Lord Adam resumed his speech. We argue that, 1. The slaves are our legal and documented property and that, 2. Their liberation is an illegal act both according to the Accords and the law, as it constitutes theft. 3. We argue that, by actively opposing the retrieval of our stolen assets, House Nerari is breaking the Accords, which state that any clan is free to pursue offenders outside of their territories within reason. As such, we demand that Nerari ceases to offer support to the organization helping those refugees and known as the Underground Railroad. Furthermore, we demand that House Nerari allow our slave hunters access to her territory unfettered. Finally, we demand redress for the loss of goods incurred to 1/3 of the market value of the lost slaves. Thank you. The Lord sits down, and the Speaker takes his place. House Nerari will now have an opportunity to defend themselves, following which I will arbitrate the dispute according to the law. Thank you, Speaker, the blonde vampire said as she stood up. I would like to address each point in turn. First, House Nerari does not support the Underground Railroad in any way. We do not fund, supply, or inform them. we merely tolerate them on our land. If Lord Adam has any proof that we support them, we invite them to provide it. Otherwise, this specific case falls in the adversarial organization clause, and we have no obligation to oppose them. You claim that the organization known as the Underground Railroad does not receive your support? Lord Adam asks with obvious distrust. That is correct. The railroad is too well organized. They receive the help of one of us. And that person is not me. Silence returned to the assembly. Lord Adam stewed in his own ire. The two black representatives from Louisiana checked their nails with mock inconspicuousness. Would you be willing to swear on it? Yes, the woman immediately retorted. And you were unable to stop them from stealing my slaves. Why would I do that? Enough, the speaker says before the bickering could start. Ariane of the Nerari is correct. She is not obligated to remove that organization from her territory. You may not invoke the hostile group law as the railroad does not target you specifically, merely your financial interests. The speaker pauses, then turns back to the blonde vampire. The other points remain. Concerning the slave hunters, I refuse, and for two reasons. First, the slave hunters have, on repeated and verified occasions, abducted free citizens out of greed or laziness, some of whom were under my protection. The slave hunters are a vile and despicable lot, more interested in filling their pockets than in applying the law they so readily invoke. They are worms and roaches crawling on my territory, touching what is mine. I have made many examples, and will make more until this is over. The blonde vampire's aura bubbled ever so slightly. Something crawled at the edge of reality, driven by her anger. When she realized it, she brought herself under control. The few who noticed did not comment. As such, I am justified in refusing access to individuals, yes, not to a whole profession. I also refuse access to bandits. This is also a profession. Slave hunters are pursuing illegal activity. They are not outlaws that no one will mourn. And this leads me to my second point. They are bandits, because I state that any slave brought to my domain is free, as is the case in many territories throughout the Union. Slaves brought to a free state do not become free. See the Dred Scott v. Sanford decision 2 years ago. Pardon my language, but if you believe that my slaves stopped being my property simply because they crossed an imaginary line, you are delusional. Pardon my language, but I can, and if you don't like it, you can fuck right off. Order, order. The speaker yelled above the hisses. He knew that House Nerari was extremely territorial. Lord Adam must have expected it and tried to rile her up. Unfortunately for him, her arguments made sense. The speaker waited a second for calm to return before addressing the crowd. Ultimately, the decision depends on Lord Adam's slaves counting as property or not. Even now, the United States is torn apart by the enduring conflict between slavers and abolitionists. Although I based our own organization around the moral institutions ruling the territory, there is now a discrepancy between the two. To my immense surprise, this discrepancy does not stem from the addition of Mexican and Canadian lands to our dominion. Indeed, those have been added seamlessly to our ranks. No, the discrepancy comes from the so-called slave power, the political might that slave owners hold over the American government and all its institutions. The Compromise of 1851, then the following events have driven a wedge between us, who have so far adhered to our principles, and the mortals, who have peddled them in favor of peace. The speaker's aura leaks as he gets more absorbed in his demonstration. If we accept that every state makes their own decision on slavery, then the slave owners should have no say in the fate of black people in abolitionist states. To allow bounty hunters to violate the local freedoms, and to deny freemen the protection of the law of the states they live in, this is an act of cowardice for the sake of tranquility. Our principles must prevail for our own peace to survive. Ariane of the Nerari has all authority in her province. If she denies slavery in Illinois, then there are no slaves in Illinois as far as this court is concerned. We will all respect our own boundaries. I will not have a repeat of the disaster that plunged Kansas into a state of protracted violence. Lord Adam winced, but he helplessly shrugged in a show of grudging acceptance. The issue was settled, for now, but the bitter taste of conflict lingered between two sides separated by an unbridgeable rift. April 1861, Marquette, Ariane's administrative building. The blonde vampire dropped the newspaper heavily on a table near Alexandria Merritt. The hierarch figured that, since Lynn had married off to one of Boston's richest men, and Ollie had ascended as the first leader of the Red Cabal, she qualified as important and deserved some explanations. "What's the matter? Too many okays? I wish. Do you remember what I said about those dwarven-engineered guns we made for the army? That you cannot wait to see who will be the sorry idiots our country next declares war on? Yes, that. Unfortunately, the joke is on me. We are the sorry idiots." The archmage leaned forward. The paper had the illustration of a smoking structure on a tiny island by a port. The header said, in big bold letters, "Fort Sumter attacked." And below, in even bigger, bolder letters, "Civil War." Ah, fuck. Chapter 126 Boston, October 1861. "I don't like this at all, Ariane. We have seen war before, you and I, down in Mexico. This will be nothing like it." Sheridan grumbles as we pass the door leading into the Boston vampire compound. The three-winged edifice was expanded with cliffside structures overlooking the river to accommodate the rising number of night denizens. "How do you figure?" I reply with curiosity. Although he seldom voices his opinion, Sheridan has proven adept at getting a feel of things, especially when it relates to humanity's darker emotions. "You remember the killing of Senator Sumner?" I frown, staring in his honest brown eyes. Thankfully, being a vassal seems to have slowed the aging of the brave Texan, and only the barest of gray can be seen in his mustache. "Yes, I do. It occurred some time ago, no? 5 years, or so." "Yes." A representative beat a senator with a cane. A cane. During a session. Because he had dared to ridicule the institution of slavery. I knew, then, that it could only end in blood. When violence is left free to roam without criticism from the party of the offender, then you know that both sides have stopped seeing the other as people worthy of the protection of the law. There are two sides divided by a burning hatred, and it will only end when one of the fighters lies bloody on the ground. I sigh. I honestly believed that it would not come to war, and that slavery would die out eventually. I even fully supported the Yukon clan in helping as many of their followers as possible to escape north by opening my lands to the Underground Railroad. Now, it appears that ideology has ignited passions to the point of no return. I know of civil wars from my father. Among all the deleterious events that can affect a country, war is the worst, and out of all the wars, civil war is the worst. Civil wars turn brother against brother, friend against friend. They sap the strength of nations and fragment families. Neighbors no longer trust each other. Communities fracture and die. After such a long prelude, the bloodbath will be cataclysmic. It would take, to calm things down, an ability to compromise that does not exist in the hearts of men. "Will you do something?" Sheridan asks. His expression remains carefully guarded. I know what he means. He wonders if we, as a community, will intervene. We do not have enough weight to stop the conflict. That would be impossible. We do, however, have the possibility to support one side and tip the scales in their favor. Only if we could reach a consensus. The only worst thing that could happen now is a vampire civil war on top of the rest. The Watcher knows that we will have our hands full in the immediate future. We move into the main building. Wilhelm the butler welcomes us from behind his desk, and I look left to see the main lobby filled with tables hosting a plethora of mortals, vassals and servants, all of them. "I'll be at the bar," Sheridan says with a subdued tone. He walks to Melitone, who smiles when she sees him. I walk the corridor to the secured access to the council chamber. The walk down is more solemn than before this time, and everyone arrives before the official starting time, including a harried-looking Melusan. 31 wardens and their seconds standing behind them sit in a circle, with territories ranging from Mexico to Quebec, and from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Only 22 are lords and ladies. Some of the wardens, like me, are still masters. Constantine is last to arrive, though he is, as always, strictly on time. He strides to his stone chair and addresses us without preamble. Ladies and gentlemen, I will break tradition by starting with an important statement. Today, Spain, France, and the United Kingdom have gathered in London to discuss a military intervention in Mexico for the official purpose of debt collection. I have received word from reliable sources that the French do not intend to withdraw from Mexico, and furthermore that the intervention itself was pushed forward by a certain masked faction hostile to the accords. The armies of Europe will make landfall within the end of the year, and they will bring with them the forces of Mask. War is upon us. Whispers spread through the room. I do not react, as Safar is the source, and she sent me word before the meeting. Now, I hope many of you have read the war provisions of the accords. I am as of now declaring a state of emergency. You may no longer communicate with your allies, trade partners and so on if they are part of the expansion faction of Mask. You may no longer invite them on our soil, and when they attack, you are duty-bound to join us in the defense of our lands. The whispers disappear and the implications are made clear. I know that some of you might be reluctant to break ties. I know that some of you see this land as a temporary position, and wish to rejoin Europe soon. I will be generous. In a week, there will be another conclave. Those of you who wish to change allegiance can signify their choice by not attending. Please note that this will be considered a declaration of war, but war within the boundaries of the standard customs. You will have one more week to leave the continent with whatever you can take with you. If, however, you stay and it turns out that you are helping the enemy, you will receive the treatment of a rogue. I hope this is clear. Death for the transgressors. A suitable punishment for abusing Constantine's generosity. With his message unambiguously stated, Constantine straightens his spine. I may not be the smoothest politician, but I know myself enough to realize that, so far, we have not been treated seriously. The accords have held because they were a convenient way to regulate relationships between vampires from very different backgrounds, and with very different expectations of the life they would find here. To many, our rules were a means to an end, and our community, merely the result of circumstances. Constantine's demeanor turns unusually cold. I understand his purpose. He wishes to remind everybody that he is still a progenitor, one of the most powerful vampires in existence, and certainly one of world's topmost archmages. When you go back to your fiefs to make your decision, I want you to remember that the expansion faction does not come here to add us to a healthy community. They are here to reap the harvest of our labor, and to absorb our resources in their pursuit of forceful unification. All that you have built here will be taken and employed, up to and including your own freedoms, because a faction on the path of total war acknowledges only two groups, their subjects, and their enemies. Do not mistake their promises and bargains for anything more than the offer of a fancier collar around your necks. We, on the contrary, are a known quantity. You know me, you know the rules, and you know that they do not stand in the way of whatever purpose you pursue. This is the Accord's first true test. Are you willing to step up and defend what we stand for? Or are you willing to roll over for whatever scraps the expansion faction throws your way? You have until next week to decide. That is all. We do not speak. Constantine has proven himself unusually eloquent. I suspect the delicate touch of Safar and Melitone. The next order of business is the civil war that just started. I will let Lady Safar take the floor and share with us the results of her work, he says. Constantine sits down, and Safar stands up. She waves her hand. The smooth fabric of the titanic stone table between us grows liquid and a three-dimensional map of North America appears, with the United States split in three different entities. I admit to being much impressed. This is an incredible feat of magical engineering, and I had no idea that we were equipped with such an excellent tool. Like the others, I stare at the display before us. The territories going from Texas to the southwest, to Virginia in the east, are contained in a single entity named Confederate States of America. The other side, much larger, is qualified as the Union, while 4 states are labeled as border states. They form an horizontal line separating the two antagonists. Safar's demeanor changes from intimate to that of the university lecturer. Her voice fills the cave with clear diction. First, I would like you to understand that this conflict is like nothing we have experienced here before. The United States Army only numbered a bit above 15,000 2 years ago. Now, upwards to 100,000 men are being rallied on each side, only limited by the inadequate means to train and equip them. It is too early to say who will have the advantage, yet right now, we can already tell that both sides will be formidable. They both have access to West Point graduates and Mexican War veterans. They both have a large amount of volunteers. In the long term, we believe that the Union will gain the advantage through their overwhelming industrial production if the conflict lasts. On the other hand, many of the Union recruits are city dwellers who may need time to reach peak physical condition. Safar waves again and the border states turn gray. Right now, those are states that refuse to leave the Union but still allow slavery. We expect them to become fully absorbed within the next year. The Union states turn gray. The victory condition for the Union is to invade and disband the Confederacy. Nothing short of occupation will suffice. Now, the southern states are lit. The victory condition for the South is twofold. They can crush the northern armies to victory, however we do not believe this outcome likely. Even if they won battle after battle, their weak infrastructure would not let them maintain the supply lines for long campaigns in the north. The other solution, and the most likely to occur, is for them to fight the Union to a standstill. They only need to last until the next elections. If war weariness prevails and Lincoln is soundly defeated, they can sue for peace. This would split the United States in two. We consider this possibility in silence. If this were to happen, the tension between the two entities would surely lead to another conflict down the road, if only because the North would actively support escaping slaves with no rules in place to stop them anymore. No matter what happens, the war will be extremely bloody due to the ideological nature of the conflict and the lack of strategic objectives. Blood will be shed, ladies and gentlemen, and a lot of it. This cannot be avoided. The question remains, then. What do we do? I have spoken. Safar sits down and Constantine replaces her. The map of the land still lies before us in liquid obsidian, the border new and unsettling. We normally do not intervene in mortal conflicts when armies meet on the field of battle, and territory is exchanged by treaty. There are, however, precedents for taking a more active part. There are also precedents for such an intervention to trigger a vampire war, one we cannot afford right now. As such, Constantine continues, I suggest that we vote on a resolution. When we reconvene in a week, I will allow proposals supported by more than 3 wardens to be presented in 15 minutes or less. We will then vote on them in elimination rounds. The final resolution must receive more than 2/3 of total votes to be accepted. Constantine sets himself up for a political deadlock. At the same time, a 2/3 majority means that even detractors will hesitate to oppose it, should it be approved. My only fear is that the resolutions and their support will draw across clan lines. If this happens, the Accords will have failed as a community. We will merely be the same old bloodlines using the assembly as a political tool to trade influence. Only if a consensus is reached will the American vampires exist as a distinct entity. Constantine may have caused me to suffer horribly before we met, but now I find myself more and more tied with him as a supporter. I will depose him in the end, of course, but for now we must work together so that a crown is left to usurp. Constantine dissolves the assembly soon after. We file out and gather in clumps across the massive complex to discuss and scheme. Soon, vassals and employees race through the corridors, bearing missives and invitations. I quickly make contact with my closest allies. Ari, my sweet little peach, the time has finally come, Nami says as we gather in her salon. Our group consists of the Roland members who have made their seats in the Northeast and Canada, the Econ, the Natalis, Safar's Hastings, and the one Vanheim master here. And me, of course. The Cadis who usually sit on the fence are notoriously absent, as are the new generation of Lancasters. Some of our more lukewarm supporters have also made themselves scarce, an unwise move. To leave now without plotting shows that they will take Constantine's offer to leave the Accords. Staying for an hour would at least raise some doubts and give them more options. Ah well, perhaps I am missing something. Is Lady Safar not joining us? The Vanheim master asks. His name is Vadim, and he is strangely effeminate with a narrow face and a thin frame. She will return after she is done with Constantine's summons, I tell them. The information circulates in the room, everybody understanding the implicit message. Constantine supports us who might very well call ourselves the Union faction. The backing of the speaker gives us an edge. We need to start working on that resolution, one of Safar's seconds notes. We agree and add ideas and conditions to a list, with the optics of bringing the neutrals to our side. Safar eventually joins us and informs me that Constantine wishes to talk. I agree, and tell her one last thing. I want to negotiate with Lord Adam of the Roland. Safar shows some surprise at the mention of a man who sued me in the past. I seem to remember that you two have been at odds on several occasions. Yes, and now I possess a decent knowledge of his assets and priorities. I believe that I have a chance at convincing him to switch sides. Safar offers me one of her rare genuine smiles. I did not plan to try and convince him. I thought him a lost cause. All the better if you can manage it. Do let me know how the negotiations go. Certainly. I'll leave the impromptu reunion, passing several couriers on my way down. Sheridan has left and I do not know where he went, but that is fine. I ask a mate from Wilhelm to carry my request for a meeting to Lord Adam, and in the meanwhile, walk to Constantine's office. His two bodyguards and renegade Rosenthal secretary let me through the very same moment. The speaker awaits at his desk, fingers intertwined as usual. More documents litter his desk than I can remember, while the bookshelves lining the wall show more disorder than usual. Our leader has been busy. Ah, Ariane, excellent. I have a mission for you, if you accept it. You still have that, proof of concept chip, do you not? I rejoice in my heart. Could it be? After all those years? Yes, I do. A repurposed brig with a light plating and a full complement of Vurger guns. 6 of them, to be precise. 5 more than necessary. Only the stoutest warships can withstand several volleys of Vurger-engineered incendiary projectiles. And is it operational? It most certainly is. Good. Good. You see, Safar and I have kept track of those elements we deemed, shall we say, unreliable. One of the northern lords has secretly prepared a port and base in the more remote parts of Nova Scotia, far to the northeast. I know where Nova Scotia is. In any case, we think that a contingent of invaders are set to arrive there. 2 days ago, we received 2 pieces of information from both Maskin and Aru informers, concerning a ship leaving Dublin and carrying a curious cargo. Do you want me to intercept it? Yes, and make sure that they do not reach our shores. Although, if possible, do not kill them. I would prefer not to create bad blood too early in the conflict. I will need more information if I am to find them. I do not have their exact route, but I have prepared an artifact that will help you find them. A vampire finder? No, the aura of vampires does not shine brightly enough to detect them. However, there is another kind of aura that is harder to miss. I am struck with memories of a previous boarding. Fey aura. Precisely. The assailants will most certainly carry vials of Fey blood into battle. Most of them do. We do not share their resources. And I am partly to be blamed for that. As such, I will prepare an artifact that will guide you to their location, provided that you are close enough. It should not be difficult since we know their destination. Will you do this for us? Yes. I do not ask payment for a task that serves our cause. Thank you. Be sure to stay in touch with Lady Safar so that we can keep you apprised of new developments. Will you be departing soon? Tomorrow, yes. I have one more errand to run. Lord Adam's borrowed study comes in shades of blue. Like all other private quarters here, the room is both tastefully decorated and sterile. The Roland Lord and his sibling welcome me in casual shirts, and with a pot of coffee. A positive sign. I hope you do not begrudge me the presence of my twin, Adam starts. Not at all. I understand that you make most decisions together. Indeed. So, you wanted to see us. We find ourselves curious as to why, as we have, shall we say, competing interests. Not necessarily, I reply as I take a sip of coffee. A bit too cold. Oh, well. The delay affords me what I wanted. The pair sits down to face me across a coffee table painted in shades of gold, a sign that I have gained their attention. For now, only politeness affords me their time. If I want more, I will have to be convincing. Correct me if I am mistaken. You have acres upon acres of plantations, and the slaves to work them. I would say that you have between 1,500 and 2,500 at any time. The work they provide is necessary to make your land profitable. I pause to assess their reactions. If my estimates are too far off, they will display signs of impatience. Go on, the second twin says. There are two scenarios. If the North wins the war, the slaves will be emancipated, and you will lose a fortune in assets. If, however, the South achieves independence, you will still bleed people as they escape north where no hunters will come seek them. Unless the Confederates include a provision in the peace settlement. You do not need to be Napoleon to see how unlikely such a victory would be. The North's industrial production outperforms the South by an order of magnitude, armament-wise. And I am partly responsible. They remain silent, which I take as a maybe. I can offer a third path, one that would be more to your advantage than the two others. I will pay you $200 per slave over a period of 2 years in quarterly installments if you agree to free them now, guaranteed by contract and backed by the Rosenthal. Lord Adams coughs. A slave is worth much more than this. Some go as high as $2,000 per head. For prize fighters or light-skinned fancy ladies, perhaps, not farmhands. Besides, you would not be losing them. You merely need to provide them with decent wages and humane living conditions, and the overwhelming majority will stay on account of not knowing any better. Freedom is pointless if it leads to immediate starvation, and the South will remain inhospitable to freedmen for a long time. Can you really afford $400,000 over 2 years? The other twin asks with curiosity. Yes. My confidence comes from the current circumstances. I am one of the country's foremost weapons manufacturers, with access to vigor engineers, and the improved results they provide. Simply put, the team Lothcent brought with them an inexpensive method of steel making they call the improved Bessemer process. Better raw materials and standardized production practices allow me to produce the best cannons this side of the Atlantic, at an affordable price. Even if my goods were not inherently superior, I could still sell them to the Army thanks to a valuable ally. SAFAR has absolute control over the Ordnance Department. As such, the Illinois Armament Manufactory already received massive orders of guns and cavalry rifles, enough for me to afford the massive bribe I am planning. My only surprise came from infantry rifle purchases. I expected my improved needle guns to flood the market. Instead, most states purchased the cheaper model from Massachusetts with less than half the firing rate to equip the troops they were training. Worse, the soldiers already deployed on the front line use antiquated smoothbore muskets, as if we were still fighting the British. Disgrace. The world must be laughing at us. An intriguing proposal. I did not expect the local devourer to try and buy our support. I am not so much bribing you as developing a future partnership. Take my proposal as a way to compensate you for the losses incurred. Sharing the burden of modernization. Adam continues. I am glad that we see eye to eye. Precisely. It leaves us with a major problem, the other twin says. You see, one of our major sources of income is slave trading. I force myself to take another sip of coffee to mask my surprise. I did not know that they had an interest in this sector as well, despite my inquiries. This is problematic. The two lords exchange a glance. Eventually, the twin nods to Adam, who in turn addresses me. We find your offer interesting, but as Adrian mentioned, this merely covers the losses of one part of our business. A Confederacy victory remains the preferable outcome. What to do? I have no solution. Slave-fueled agriculture can transition into standard agriculture, but slave trading itself cannot be replaced since it will be entirely illegal. I need to find something else. Can the circumstances help me? How else could I compensate them? Oh, of course. There is one aspect of war that can only go one way, I tell them, certain of my guess, the control of the ocean. General Winfield Scott's plan to blockade southern ports cannot fail in the short term, and you, gentlemen, export a great many things. I know that they sell cotton, sugar, and tobacco abroad. No matter what, their trade lines will be disrupted for a long time, condemning their export-focused business to failure. What do you propose? The second twin, Adrian, asks. I do not miss it. Their perfect immobility and contained auras do not reveal anything of their inner thoughts, which means that I have hit the nail on the head. Lady Safar taught me this little trick, that old ones who lack practice increase their control over themselves when they want to hide something. They have taken the bait. An exclusive agreement. I will purchase your cotton in bulk for the next 3 years at pre-war market rate. All of it. All of it. Yes. In return we emancipate our slaves and support the Union faction in the coming vote. No, you support the Union faction for the duration of the war, and at least 3 years. Whichever lasts the longest. The duration of the war or 2 years, Adam corrects. That is fine. Open support. You let it be known that you are both on our side. Once again, the twins exchange a silent glance. We find your proposal interesting. But we need to discuss it in private before we agree to your terms. I hope you understand. Of course. No lords and ladies agree to anything important without pondering the question for at least a day. A tentative agreement is all I can hope for now. I do. Before I leave, there was one last thing, I say as I stand up. We are the curators of this world, or shepherds, if you prefer. We are denied innovation and artistry, but we are granted cold intellects, and long-term mindsets to offset the loss. I would argue that slavery holds you back economically and socially, but I know that you may remain unconvinced. Instead, I will ask you to examine what your instincts tell you. Everything we value in humans, the spark that leads them to greatness and insanity alike, it cannot express itself when body and mind are chained. You are missing out on much by lording over cattle instead of people, and your own nature should tell you that much. We do not hunt cows. We do not hang cotton bales as trophies on our walls. I can provide the machines to replace the hands you need to increase your wealth, while those hands can work on the drawing board or the canvas instead. Consider it, then come back to me. We need not be enemies on this. I expect silence and even ridicule. Instead, Adam laughs and Adrian smiles lightly. I did not expect you to call on our hard, Ariane of the Nirari. My advisors were right. Deborahs truly are creatures of emotion, after all. Very well. As a reward for your refreshing honesty, I will be frank with you in return. We have considered transitioning out of labor-intensive agriculture for some time. The details will have to be hammered out to both parties' satisfaction, but we are most definitely interested, the warden says. Can you extend your offer to others on our side? With the Natilis and the Canadians, you already have a majority, but if you want a true unification, you will need to leave no one behind, his sibling continues. I cannot afford to fund the entire South personally, however, perhaps I can find others willing to assist. That would be appreciated. After a few more polite exchanges, I return to Safar to share what was decided. She agrees to take over the negotiations since I will be out, though she mentions that not all of the southern lords will be willing to budge. Some, after all, come from feudal societies. Some Rolands will refuse out of sheer stubbornness. They cannot envision an end to a peasant-centric society. After I am done, I return to the lobby and find Sheridan snoring softly on a leather couch. I come closer and catch a whiff of him. My, what a busy. Wait a minute. Sheridan, wake up. I say as I shake him and grab the hand already grabbing for his gun. Ariane. What's the matter with you? Did I not leave you in deep conversation with Melitone? The scent of fear, removed of its spice since the ranger is no prey. Eyes to search for an exit. Perhaps? Are you banging the speaker's sister? I hiss, outraged. Do you have any idea? Sheridan gently removes my hand from his shoulder and gives me one of his frank, no-nonsense gazes. Ariane dear, we might be partners in our quest to rid the world of evil. So he keeps believing. But that doesn't mean that you get a say in whichever romantic partner I choose, lady. Besides, we'll soon be as busy as a one-legged man at an ass-kicking contest, so cut me some slack, will you? He. Arg. And I can say nothing because he is a vassal. Language. I weakly retort. What are we gonna do anyway? Where is the old man sending us this time? I am not his lapdog. Right. So, what are we supposed to do? Anything illegal? GRMBLL. Speak up, Ariane. Piracy. So, does that bad language ban last for the entire operation, or? No need to be a smart. No need to be so snide, Sheridan. Let us away. 2 weeks later, off the coast of Nova Scotia. The cormorant bobs up and down as the powerful entities on its deck look at me with a mix of wonder and beflaement. I place the enchanted loudspeaker before my lips and greet them in a proper, appropriate fashion. Is this thing working? Oh, it is. Ahem. You have run afoul of the dread pirate Ariane, queen of the waves, you sorry bunch of salty sea dogs. Yes, what is it, Olaf? It is? Excellent. Ahem. My gunner informs me that the cannons are ready. Behold that rock over there. Silence spreads over the calm seas as the powerful warriors exchange befuddled words. Just one moment please, we were aiming for your ship, so we need to reposition. Behold, the might of the spirit of Dalton. Are you done already? I can't. Ah, excellent. I said, behold the might of, boom. A cataclysmic deflagration drowns all other noises, and a 10 paces long plume of fire emerges from the side of our ship. Far behind and to the side of the enemy ship, a shard of granite rising from a small islet explodes in a cascade of flaming debris. A dark plume rises from the crater, all that remains of the exposed stone. Smoldering fragments rain down on the ocean's waves. Nice shot, Olaf, by the water that rock never saw it coming. Shut up, Sheridan, I handle the threats. What do you even know of proper pirating? You are not even wearing a tricorn, and you expect me to take you seriously? Ahem. Where was I? Oh, yes. Bring down your sails, drop anchor, and send someone to parley, or we will fire upon your vessel. You saw what our guns can do. I invite you to consider the structural integrity and flammable nature of your ship and reach the logical conclusion. Also, our hull is warded, so no funny business. If I see anything suspicious, you will get to visit the local seaweeds. Am I clear? I see some activity on the deck, including 2 vampires arguing with each other with one waving at the column of smoke rising nearby. Eventually, the reasonable one seems to win the argument as his second throws his hands in anger. The head vampire lowers a skiff and rows to us. On their ship, nothing stirs. I decide to wait by returning to my throne, which I placed underneath the mizzen mast, the one just after the biggest mast. I place my revolver on a nearby barrel and invite a pair of young sailors to resume their strange, leggy dance for my own entertainment. Is this necessary? Sheridan grumbles. I could sing, I reply. The grumpy ranger does not call my bluff. Eventually, the masked vampire gets close enough for the negotiations to begin. Please do not shoot, there are vassals aboard. He explains in a pleading voice. Blimey. Eventually, I am forced to agree to let them land under the condition that they all depart soon after. They do not have the blood and food supply for a safe trip back. I allow them to do so in their secret port, and the meeting with their renegade Accords host is somewhat awkward. 2 days later, they are gone with the express condition that they may not engage in hostile activities with us for the next 5 years. I would call that a complete success. Ariane, reality is not like your saucy books. Tricorns are not necessary to engage in high-sea banditry. Sheridan, I recall you saying, if it's stupid but it works, it ain't stupid. Therefore, wear the damn hat. Toad continued.